A very dangerous parasitic virus turns humans into zombies, spreading throughout an entire city. It infects all the residents, and the transformation begins in their homes. From the news, we learn that a virus has started spreading from China to other parts of the world, and the virus was called worm flu. We also learn that this virus is not transmitted through the air, but rather through blood. If an infected person sneezes blood into someone else's face, that person will also get infected. Quarantine was imposed on those infected with the virus as its spread began to increase gradually worldwide. We understand that the virus produces worms that live in the body, and these worms reproduce at a terrifying rate, potentially reaching over 1,000 worms. Of course, the more they eat, the more they multiply. With this, we understand what is happening in the world at this moment. Next, we move to California, where we meet a girl named Emma, who has recently moved to the city with her family. Emma struggled to adapt to her new situation and couldn't make friends at school, unlike her sister Stacy, who had already formed relationships with many people. At the end of the school day, Stacy noticed that her sister liked a boy named Ivan and offered to give him a ride in their dad's car. Ivan agreed, and after a while, their father, Michael, who was a teacher at the school, arrived and drove them. The journey was long, and during the ride, Stacy kept texting Emma, encouraging her to get closer to Ivan, but Emma wasn't interested. They all continued talking until Michael received a call and told them that someone in a neighboring state would be arriving soon. Eventually, the conversation with Michael and Ivan ended, and in the evening, Michael sat with his daughters for dinner. He yelled at Stacy for using her phone during the meal, but Stacy got very angry, and an argument broke out. From their conversation, it became clear that Michael's relationship with his wife was not in good shape, and that they were a distant family. Michael yelled at Stacy and ordered her to go to her room. Emma finished her meal and went to her room, where she talked to her friend Gracie via video call. Gracie was drinking a beverage during their conversation, and they talked about a viral video on YouTube of a man riding an elevator, looking exhausted, with a woman in the elevator with him. Suddenly, the camera showed the man eating the woman. Rumors claimed it was because of the virus. Suddenly, a paper fell from the window in the shape of a paper airplane. When Emma opened the paper, she discovered that it was from Ivan. Emma hurried downstairs, where Ivan was waiting for her, and they confessed their love for each other. Just then, Ivan's father, Bill, who Ivan hated deeply, interrupted their conversation. Bill told Ivan to enjoy himself and then went into the house. Ivan smiled and entered the house, where Michael, the girl's father, was sitting alone and appeared sad. Emma asked him about her mother's condition, and he replied that she wasn't doing well at the moment. Michael was also dealing with work and school problems. The next day, Michael was at school teaching the students about parasites that enter the body. He showed them a video of how these parasites are extracted, even presenting a live worm that enters the body. He explained that the method of extracting these parasites was the same as the method used to remove the worm caused by the virus. Suddenly, Gracie began coughing and became very tired, so she quickly ran out of the classroom, followed by her mother to check on her. But Gracie collapsed on the ground and was in a serious condition. A young man came to help her, and Emma asked him to stay with her while she went to find the school doctor. Emma ran to look for the school doctor, and during that time, Gracie suddenly woke up and vomited on the young man's face. It turned out that Gracie was already infected with the virus. Later, Gracie and the young man were placed in quarantine. Emma asked the doctor how Gracie got infected, and the doctor told her that Gracie had just returned from a neighboring state and might have brought the disease with her. Meanwhile, the virus began to spread throughout the city. The government decided to close the schools and fully quarantine the city. Michael knew his wife was at the airport, but he couldn't find a taxi. He told his daughters they would have to go by themselves, as he needed to go to the airport to pick up their mother. Michael left, and the girls got into the car with the father of one of their friends. On their way home, they noticed that all the city's residents were gathering their belongings in preparation to leave the city, but they didn't understand the cause of the panic. When the girls arrived home, they learned from the news that the virus had spread throughout the city, and the military had decided to impose a full quarantine to prevent the virus from spreading to other cities. Emma tried calling Gracie but got no response. Suddenly, she heard a loud noise outside and went to look out the window. She saw a deer in the street, but moments later, she saw a helicopter flying overhead carrying a large crate. When she looked back at the spot where the deer had been, it was gone. At that moment, Michael called the girls to tell them that he wouldn't be able to return to the city due to the roads being closed by the military, and he asked them to take care of themselves. Because they would be alone, they tried to reach them as soon as possible. The girls were very happy because they would be home alone. That night, they discovered that there was very little food in the house, so they had to eat the available cake. They were watching the news and listening to the speech of the President of the United States, who said that the virus would be eradicated, but only if everyone cooperated with the specified protocols. Suddenly, they heard strange knocking on the door. Emma looked through the peephole and saw the shadow of something moving quickly, which scared her a lot, but she gathered her courage and opened the door, only to find nothing. She turned to her sister Stacy and told her that no one was there. But suddenly, someone grabbed Emma by the neck, and it was Stacy's friend, CJ. Stacy told her they would spend the night together. Emma thought this was according to her father's instructions, but Stacy didn't care about that and went with CJ to her room. As for Emma, she didn't care either and went to her own room. She logged on to social media and found a post from Gracie's mother, saying that Gracie's condition was stable and there were no problems. While browsing the comments, Emma found a video of a person whose face was covered, claiming that what was happening was a conspiracy against the world and that the government had created the virus. But Emma didn't pay attention to that and went to sleep. The next day, everyone woke up to the sound of a military vehicle, which had left them a box containing supplies for their protection. The box included food, medicine, flashlights, and some other items. Neither CJ nor Stacy cared about what was in the box. They treated the situation like a joke. At that moment, the girls received a call from their mother, who was still at the airport and hadn't moved yet, and they didn't know what to do for her. Then, they turned on the TV and followed the news, discovering that a group of people infected with the virus had escaped from quarantine and were now in the city. Stacy told her sister that she and CJ were going to a party that night, but Emma told her that would violate the rules. But suddenly, Emma received a message from Evan telling her that he would meet her at the party. It turned out that Stacy had contacted him instead of Emma and introduced him to the party. They all had to break the rules and go to the party. Emma entered the party house and started looking for Stacy until she found her. At the party, she noticed a person with their face covered, and it turned out they were infected with the virus and were trying to stay away from others. Emma went with Evan to sit together, but since there were no empty rooms, they entered the bathroom. Evan confessed to Emma that he liked her very much and was attracted to her. But suddenly, they heard Stacy scream, so they quickly ran to find out that she had found CJ cheating on her with another girl, and she started crying. Emma tried to calm her down, but suddenly, the same man with the covered face appeared, holding a girl by the back. The scream from the girl caused the infected man to attack the person trying to defend her. They engaged in a violent struggle, and everyone noticed that the infected man's eyes were red, so they realized he was infected. They all fled from the house while Emma and Stacy hid in a room with a hole where they could observe what was happening. They saw the infected man attacking anyone who approached him and ending their lives. Suddenly, a girl appeared trying to escape from the house, but the infected man noticed her and killed her instantly. Afterward, the infected man disappeared from the place, and they thought he had left. They decided to escape, but as they were leaving, they accidentally knocked over a bottle, causing the infected man to return quickly. Stacy tried to get away from him, but the infected man grabbed her and hit her, infecting her with the virus. The infected man tried to attack Emma, but she managed to hit him and push him away. The infected man then tried to kill Emma again, but someone else came from behind him and ended his life. They then heard the sound of police cars, so they all ran out the back door. They returned home, and Stacy started cleaning the blood off herself, but she refused to tell her sister how she felt. She told her that she was fine and nothing happened to her. Before going to sleep, Emma watched the videos posted by the man who had said that what was happening was a conspiracy. In one of the videos, he mentioned that parasites might be able to communicate with each other, but humans wouldn't understand that, and these parasites might be gathering in certain places, like nests or cells. Emma stopped watching the video and sent a message to Evan, then noticed that the light in his window had turned off, so she understood that he was ignoring her. The next day, the girls woke up to find the military at the house, and examiners were checking the girls. They didn't find any symptoms on them, so they were allowed to leave. After they left, Stacy felt something strange in her neck, and when she removed her hair, she found a change. She continued watching the news, where they spoke about houses marked with distinctive signs by the military, which were the houses the scientists had examined, and they wrote the number of infected people in them. Michael contacted his daughters and warned them to secure the doors and windows tightly. He told them where the weapon was that they could use for protection. Suddenly, the connection was cut off, and they saw on the news that the Chinese government had started bombing the areas infected with the virus. After that, the television started experiencing signal interruptions. The girls went to search for the weapon that Michael had mentioned, and they were also looking for their mother's ring. They felt that something was wrong and that she might have been injured, so they found a gun and realized that she knew how to use it well. After a while, they noticed one of the neighbors firing a flare from the guns in the supply boxes. This flare indicated that someone was injured. The army quickly arrived and arrested the injured woman and her husband, who had fired the flare. She tried to send distress signals to Michael to explain what was happening, but the network was weak. Suddenly, the girls noticed another flare being shot into the sky, realizing that the virus had fully spread across the city. The girls decided to flee the city, quickly rushing to prepare the car. Emma went to ask Ivan to come with them, but when he saw her, he closed the window in her face. So, Emma and Stacy left together, reaching the city limits to find the army had blocked the road. The soldiers threatened them to leave immediately or they would die, but Stacy tried to convince them that they were not infected. Suddenly, they saw a car approaching quickly, and she told her sister to get in quickly. Stacy got into the car, and the army fired at the approaching car. The girls seized the opportunity and fled quickly, returning to their home. The next day, Stacy felt the worm beginning to move in her back, but she decided to hide it from her sister. A military vehicle passed by and told citizens that it was forbidden to hide an infected person at this time. Stacy heated a pin and tried to place it on the spot of the worm, but the worm resisted. That night, Stacy and her sister were sitting together to eat. Stacy wanted to confess to her sister that she was infected, but at the last moment, she hesitated. Instead, she told her sister another secret, that their father had cheated on their mother with one of the student girls, which is why they didn't get along. Emma was saddened when she found out. Suddenly, they heard a knock at the door, and it was Ivan's voice asking them to open it. Stacy tried to stop her sister from opening it, but Emma quickly opened the door, and Ivan entered. He told them that Bill had been infected with the virus. Then they heard loud knocking on the door, and it was Bill, knocking crazily from outside. Emma looked at him and saw his terrifying appearance. Suddenly, Bill entered through the window, frightening them. The gun fell to the floor, and Bill rushed towards Emma. The worm was coming out of his ear and was very long. Bill got closer to Emma and was about to infect her, but suddenly Stacy shot him and killed him. Emma went into a state of shock after seeing what had happened, and Ivan tried to calm her down. Meanwhile, Stacy began showing symptoms of the virus, and they realized she had been infected. After a while, we see that Emma locked her sister in the bathroom and nailed the door shut so she couldn't escape. Ivan told her it would be best to hand her over to the army for treatment, but she refused and said she would help her sister until their father returned. Meanwhile, Emma wrote a mark on the door of the house indicating that it had been checked and there was no infected person inside. When she entered, she discovered that her sister had woken up and asked her to eat, but Emma refused to give her food so the worms wouldn't grow in her body. Then, Emma took her sister's hand. She sat and searched through her father's research for anything that could help her sister. She watched the same video her father had shown on the last day of school. One day, she sat on the roof, feeling sad because there was no mobile network, and she felt she would never be able to contact Michael again. Ivan came to comfort her and sat with her. At that moment, CJ entered the house, looking for Stacy, and found her locked in the bathroom. He reached out to her, but suddenly, Stacy bit his hand, and CJ continued to scream until Ivan and Emma heard them. They rushed toward them and discovered that CJ had died because his arm had been eaten. They carried him and went to bury him. Meanwhile, Emma was trying to get the worm out of her sister's back and decided to prepare a sedative meal to make her go to the bathroom. She fed it to her sister, who ate it and fell asleep. Emma and Ivan entered the bathroom and managed to locate the worm, placing a patch over it to block its oxygen, so the worm would exit her sister's body in search of oxygen. Indeed, this happened, and when the worm emerged, it started pulling Emma, taking a long time because the worm was so long. Suddenly, Stacy woke up from the sedative effect and grabbed the worm that had been in her sister's place. Stacy managed to pull the worm out of her body, and Ivan kept pressing it until it was destroyed. They thought Stacy had been cured, and they had done what scientists could not do. The next day, Stacy woke up feeling much better, and there was no trace of the worm in her back. At that moment, military vehicles passed by, and they announced that everyone must leave the city immediately. Ivan told Emma they should leave, but Emma was worried about her sister if they found out she had been infected. Ivan left her and went to listen to the news on the radio. When he returned, Emma was shocked to see a huge amount of worms coming out of her sister. She screamed and woke up from her sleep to discover it was just a dream. Meanwhile, Ivan called Emma and showed her the empty fridge with traces of blood, telling her that her sister was still infected. Emma rushed to find Stacy, and they found themselves in one of the houses in the city where the entire family had died. They entered rooms searching for Stacy, but they found a group of infected people standing, with worms coming out of one of their bodies. They discovered that what the man had mentioned in the video was true, that they had become like a hive. Suddenly, Gracie opened her eyes, but the infected people didn't notice Emma and Ivan. The two tried to escape, but they bumped into something on the ground, and the infected people chased them. They ran toward the door but discovered that there were more infected people outside, so they quickly ran to the second floor, entered a room, and tried to close the door. However, vampires were trying to get in. Emma shot them and killed them, then closed the door. At that moment, they discovered that Stacy was with them in the room, and she was in such a bad state that she begged Emma to kill her, but Emma refused. Suddenly, Stacy transformed, and many worms started coming out of her mouth. Then Ivan and Emma jumped out the window, escaping, as the infected were about to break down the door. The two discovered that the army had started bombing the entire city. Before a rocket hit them, they jumped into the swimming pool and tried to stay in the water as long as possible. When they emerged, they found that the city had been completely destroyed. They walked through the city until they reached the border, where they found no soldiers. Emma saw a picture of herself with her family on one of the shops, ran to grab it, and read the message written on it. She discovered that Michael had met her mother and that they were now at her uncle's house in Washington. Ivan took her, and they traveled to Washington, feeling happy that they had finally overcome that difficult period.